During the uneasy twilight of the Cold War, the world felt like it was hanging by a thread. Two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, held enough firepower to erase civilization, each one staring the other down through the lens of nuclear weapons. Out of this tense standoff came a chilling strategy known as launch on warning. The idea was brutally simple. If the Soviets fired their missiles, America would have only minutes to hit back before being destroyed. There'd be no time for debate, no time for confirmation, just instant retaliation. That's where machines came in. A massive radar network called the Ballistic Missile Early Warning System, BMEWS, was built to watch the skies every second of every day. Its purpose was singular: to spot the first flash of a Soviet missile launch and give the US president a few precious minutes, maybe 10, maybe 15 at best, to decide whether to respond with a counterstrike that could end the world. On October 5, 1960, that system suddenly cried wolf. From a radar base in Greenland came an urgent alert to NORAD headquarters in Colorado. The machines were detecting not just one missile, but dozens. To the computers, it looked like a massive Soviet first strike. Analysts checked the data, ran their calculations, and came back with a horrifying level of confidence. A 99.9% chance that it was real. Sirens wailed. Air Force crews ran for their bombers. Generals grabbed the red phones. For several frozen minutes, the entire planet teetered on the brink of annihilation, all because of what turned out to be nothing more than a ghost in the machine. The truth, buried under confusion and myth for decades, wasn't about a faulty satellite or a secret Soviet trick. The real culprit was something far simpler and far stranger. The world almost ended because the radar mistook the rising moon for a nuclear attack, the doomsday machine. Our story actually begins a few years earlier, in 1957, when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik. That tiny beeping sphere did more than orbit the Earth. It sparked a deep, cold panic across the West. It proved that the Soviets could send something into space, which meant they could also send a missile across continents. The US government reacted immediately. President Eisenhower ordered that the BMEWS project be put at the very top of America's master urgency list. The goal was staggering: build a radar fence across the top of the world, from Alaska to Greenland, that could spot missiles the moment they were fired. It was an $800 million collaboration between the US, Canada, and Denmark, built under impossible conditions. The most important link in that chain was Thule Site J in Greenland. Construction began in May 1960, and it was a race against both time and the Arctic. Everything about it was extreme. The radar buildings were made of heavy concrete and sat on permafrost, so engineers had to install refrigeration systems beneath them just to stop the heat from melting their foundations. By late September 1960, the system was finally declared operational. It had been online for 5 days when everything went wrong. At the heart of Thule was a giant radar known as the ANFPS-50. It wasn't a rotating dish, but a fixed wall of steel and electronics. 4 enormous immovable reflectors built by General Electric. Each one weighed around 1,500 tons and stared permanently over the horizon toward the Soviet Union, scanning the sky at ultra-high frequencies for anything moving fast enough to be an ICBM. But there was a fatal oversight. During early testing, engineers had noted that the radar could pick up reflections from the moon. They knew it was possible, yet in the rush to get the system online, no one added proper safeguards to account for it. That missing line of code, that unconsidered variable, would soon push the planet to the edge of nuclear war. The 99.9% lie. Just before dawn on October 5, 1960, the moon rose slowly over Norway. From the perspective of the Thule radar, it appeared right where Soviet missiles would come from if they were ever launched. As the radar pulsed its ultra-powerful signal into the sky, the moon's surface reflected it back, not faintly, but in a massive flood of data. The computer didn't know it was the moon. It just saw something enormous moving in from the horizon, matching exactly the trajectory of a missile attack. The filters were designed to identify ICBMs, so that's what the machine concluded it was seeing. Within seconds, Thule's console lit up. Dozens of incoming warheads detected. The alarm went straight to NORAD's headquarters in Colorado. The system's confidence level was chilling, 99.9% certain. According to US nuclear protocol, that meant only one thing: immediate readiness for counterattack. Strategic Air Command scrambled its bombers. Missile crews went on high alert. General Thomas Power was notified. ready to issue strike orders. President Eisenhower was to be woken within minutes. He had roughly 10 minutes to decide whether to retaliate. Inside NORAD's command center, chaos met discipline. Some officers stayed calm, going through procedures step by step. Others described a sense of pure dread, the understanding that, if they were wrong, hesitation could mean total destruction. The machine was screaming certainty, but the men in the room hesitated, the ghost in the machine. That hesitation saved the world. Among the flashing lights and blaring alarms, someone remembered a small but critical detail. Nikita Khrushchev, the Soviet premier, was in New York City at that very moment, leading the Soviet delegation to the United Nations. It made no sense that the USSR would start a nuclear war while their leader was standing on American soil. This one human fact, a piece of ordinary intelligence the radar couldn't comprehend, stopped the catastrophe. As the minutes dragged on, the incoming missiles never advanced. They just hung there, fixed in place on the radar. Slowly, disbelief replaced panic. Engineers began digging into the data. Then they saw it. The readings matched the moonrise exactly. The radar hadn't seen a missile launch at all. It had seen the moon. The alert was canceled. Bombers were called back. The tension bled out of the room as realization spread, patching the hole. The incident sent shockwaves through the military and scientific communities. A system that had been hailed as foolproof had just nearly triggered global destruction over a basic physics glitch. Within weeks, engineers developed a fix. By January 1961, the radar at Thule had been upgraded with a clever new system, 2-second frequency hopping. Instead of transmitting on a single frequency, the radar now rapidly switched between several. This allowed it to distinguish between the fast-moving small signatures of real missiles and the slow, steady reflections of large celestial bodies like the moon. It was a brilliant patch, but also a sobering one. After Thule, operators were trained not just to trust their machines, but to question them. They were instructed to check astronomical data before treating any alert as genuine. The new standing question became, are we sure it's not the moon? Even with improvements, similar scares kept happening. In 1967, a massive solar flare made the system think it was being jammed by the Soviets. In 1979 and 1980, computer errors caused fresh false alarms. One from a training tape accidentally loaded into the live system, another from a bad chip. And in 1983, a Soviet officer named Stanislav Petrov saved the world when his system falsely reported an American missile launch, and he refused to believe it. The pattern was clear. Every time we built a foolproof system, the universe found a way to fool it. The enduring precedent. The Thule false alarm of October 5, 1960, was more than a bizarre technical failure. It was a revelation about human fragility in an age of machines. It showed that launch on warning was an illusion of control, that our systems could be 99.9% sure of something completely false. The near catastrophe revealed a truth that still echoes through every generation of defense technology. Our biggest risk doesn't come from the enemy, but from ourselves. The machine was flawless, except it didn't know about the moon. It lacked what only people can have: context, doubt, and the ability to stop and think. In the end, what prevented nuclear war wasn't a billion-dollar radar or a line of code. It was a handful of people who chose not to trust a machine. That moment in 1960 became a quiet warning to the future. It reminded us that even the most advanced systems are vulnerable to the simplest errors, and that the last safeguard is always human judgment. Marshall Schulman of the State Department would later put it plainly: false alerts are not rare, and the greatest danger is the belief that we've learned enough to stop them. In a world increasingly run by automation and artificial intelligence, the lesson from Thule still stands. Never surrender our judgment to a machine, no matter how certain it sounds, because the day we do, the next 99.9% lie might be our last.